everybody, and welcome to my craft room. In today's episode, we are going to be making some patriotic themed firecrackers. They look like this. It is just a cute little thing to do for 4th of July, Labor Day, one of those holidays. Sit it on your table, on your shelf, or even sell them. So what I did is I bought a dowel, a wood dowel. It's 2 inches wide. It came in a 4-foot length. But I cut them down to 5 inches, 4 inches, and 3 inches. I went ahead and sanded them so that they're smooth and won't give you any splinters, and I painted them. The first one, the tall one, is blue. We're going to put some white stars on that. The 4-inch one is, I painted all white, and we did drill a hole in the top for the fuse on all of these also. And the littlest one is 3 inches. And that one is going to get some, a blue band and some red vertical stripes. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that. You'll notice there's not as much background noise in this video. I'm new to this, and I learned my lesson and turned my ceiling fan off. So there won't be as much background noise. So we're going to get started. I will change the camera angle so you can see what I'm doing, and we will go from there. Okay, we are going to start with the blue one. What we're going to add to this is some white stars. And what I have done is I went ahead, so that this video doesn't end up being an hour long, I went ahead and used my Cricut to create a template with the stars. And what this material is it's called masking film. It's really good for stencils. It's kind of translucent. And it's really good for, it's got some great adhering to the wood, which will allow us to not have any leakage underneath. So I always like to trim it really close to the side. And I can, there I go with again. I tend to say a lot. I apologize in advance, but I'm trying to break the habit. So first, by trimming it that way will allow us to use the table to line it up. So I will put this down on the table like this and kind of put it around so that it stays straight. So just got to get one end started. And once we get that one end started, and you can use transfer tape. I just find that it's not really necessary with this type of material because it's pretty thick. If you had a lot of detail, then I would recommend using transfer tape. But this is not a lot of detail, so fairly easy to apply. Once I get it started, I will just be able to pull it off and wrap it around pretty easily. And kind of the whole point of this channel is I'm just going to do it as I normally would. I might make mistakes, but that's okay. Mistakes are human. The whole point of this channel that I wanted to do is I wanted to show you a little bit more realness. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and most of the time what I see from those YouTube videos is a lot of perfection, which is not always real life. I know I make a lot of mistakes, but I want to teach you how to fix those mistakes as you're doing them. And I don't see a lot of videos out there that do that. So I wanted to be that person that would help you figure out, okay, I messed this up. How do I fix it? And if you can find the fix on one of my videos, then great. So what I'm doing right now, not very successfully, I might add, is I'm trying to get all the air bubbles out so that they're sealed all the way around the stars. Because air bubbles will just lead to leaking, the paint leaking underneath, and we don't want that. So I'm just going to try to press them down as best as possible so that I don't have any leaking. It looks like that's better now. There's still a few little spots, but I think we'll be okay. I am going for a rustic look, so if I get any spots that are leaking or that don't look all the way sharp, I can sand them down a little bit in that spot and give it more of a rustic feel. So I'm okay with a couple little leaking spots, no big deal. Okay, so I'm going to paint this one, and I am going to use a sponge to do these painting, and you're just going to do light pressure on them, because the lighter the pressure, the less chance you have of it leaking out the sides. So I'm just going to use a little bit of the white paint, and it's just acrylic paint. You can get the acrylic paint, Hobby Lobby, Walmart, anywhere that they sell acrylic paint, Amazon, doesn't matter. Some people like to use chalk paint, and I actually love chalk paint, but it doesn't have to be that expensive. You can just do a cheap acrylic paint, especially if you're just starting out in doing crafts. It's not necessary to spend a bunch of money. Crafting ain't cheap, that's for sure. So when you can save money, any options or opportunities you have to save money, I try to do that. So I'm just going to go around and paint this, trying to get the paint, making a mess as usual. That's what I'm good at. Trying to get as much paint off of my fingers and onto the product as possible. And I'm gonna fast forward and paint this for you, and I'll come back to you when I'm done. I got all of them covered now. Okay, that looks good. We're going to set that aside to dry, and we're going to mask off the other ones that we need to paint next that are going to get red. So this medium size one is going to get some horizontal red stripes. And I went ahead and cut some strips of the masking film to use to block off the stripes. You can use painter's tape also. It works just as well, but I would recommend, if you're going to use painter's tape, to do the Mod Podge method. If you don't know what that is, I can explain to you what that is. You would put the stencil on, or put the masking tape on, and then do a light coat of Mod Podge over it. And what that does is it seals the painter's tape edges so that you don't get the bleeding underneath. But I found with this masking film, it does really well at making crisp lines, so that step isn't necessary. Again, if I was going to do a lot of words, I would probably do that Mod Podge method, because you don't want to take the chance of the words coming out and not being, legible, or having a lot of leaking underneath. With the stars and stuff like that, that is pretty basic, so I'm not too concerned about it. But there is a method to do if you want to avoid getting that leaking. I'm doing there's my again. I'm doing the stripes in the middle, because I want it to be red, white, red, white. Wait, red, white, red, white, red. I want more red stripes than white stripes, in other words. So I wanted to do the red at the top and the bottom, so I'm marking them off and using a little piece of the strips that I cut for spacing, so that I get them as evenly spaced as possible and getting it as straight as possible. All right. I cut that off, and then I'm going to use what I cut off here to do the vertical stripes on my little one. So I am going to use painter's tape for the top of this, because that line doesn't have to be perfect. So I'm not going to worry about doing the Mod Podge method on this either. I'm just going to do the painter's tape and rub it down really tightly so that I don't have any leakage underneath. But since I am going to be painting over this, it doesn't really matter if it leaks and isn't perfect, because I'm going to paint over it with blue. So we're going to rub that down really tightly. And this is the top because it has the hole. Okay, more of the masking film. We're going to use this to make our vertical stripes. And again, I'm going to use the little piece to get my spacing even. So there, and I'm going to use a little piece to make the spacing even. I actually could use this little piece as a stripe. It happens to be big enough. It doesn't have to be perfect, so if it's not perfectly even spacing, that's okay too. But try to get it as close to even as possible, just so that it looks nice. Okay, I'll probably do one more stripe. I think I have room for one more. Yep, right in the middle. I didn't measure this one because I want it to be kind of in the middle, so I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. There we go. And again, we're going to rub it down, make sure it's nice and flat on both sides. Another method you can use when painting with stencils is, if you do use like a painter's tape, you don't have to use Mod Podge. You could actually use your base color. So you could paint over the edges white, let that dry, and then paint the red on top of that, and that will also seal in those edges to keep paint from leaking underneath. Because what paint would leak underneath would be white, so you wouldn't see it as much. But this stuff is really good, and I don't really need to do that step, so we're going to go ahead and just paint. So I've got my red paint here, and I'm going to paint lightly. This brush is making some funny looking lines, so I'm going to switch to a different brush. There we go, that's better. I'm also painting the top of this one because that is where the wick is going to be, or the fuse, I guess we should call it, is going to be. I want to make sure there's not a lot of lines on this. And we're going to let that dry. When that's dry, we'll come back and do the blue on the top of the little one and the stars, and we'll take all of this off. And I just noticed that I got some white paint on my blue top here, so I'm going to fix that while it's drying and let it dry again. Even though I think that's the bottom, but still. Perfect. Okay, we're gonna let all that dry and I'll be back. We're back, and it looks like we are paint dry and ready to peel off and see what we get here. Okay. This stuff is great. It is very sticky. So when we peel it, it's going to probably break and rip, and that's okay though. We'll just do the best we can. Knocking stuff over. Making a mess as usual. All right, I'm peeling. And some people like to peel it when it's like halfway dry. I just find that it ends up making more of a mess because it's hard to find a place to grab it. And, you know, it's easier if I just wait till it's dry. I can see one star that didn't get painted very well. It's okay, we can fix that. So far it looks pretty good though. Looks like we got the majority of the stars coated pretty well and not a lot of leaking, so that's good. So you can see what that looks like. It looks pretty good. There's the star that we didn't get very good, but we can fix that. And there's a couple that leaked a little. I don't know if I can get close enough that you can see. Those ones leaked a little bit, but like I said, I can just go over that with a little bit of sandpaper or take a really fine brush and just fix the blue. So, but I kind of like that it looks a little rustic and not perfect. That's kind of the result I was going for. So that's great. So this one, other than the fuse that we'll put on the top, is pretty much done. So I'm gonna set that off to the side. Next we have the red stripes. Peel that off and see what we got. I have a feeling, I saw a couple bubbles, so I may have to fix this one, but we'll see. Again, not going for perfect. Yeah, so it leaked a little bit right here. Not as perfect as I would like. I am gonna fix that with some white paint and a fine brush. And like I said, you can use the Mod Podge method with this also to try to keep that sealed so that doesn't happen. A little bit of thickness on the paint here. But like I said, we're going to make mistakes on this channel, so it's not going to be perfect. This one is very brush strokey. I don't know if I really necessarily like that. I might go over it a little bit or sand it so that it looks intentional. There's ways to fix our mistakes here, and so that's what we're going to do with that one. But let's peel this off first so we can see where we're at, what all we have to fix. That actually looks good. I don't mind a couple little blobs or little coloring outside the lines, so to speak. I'm okay with coloring outside the lines. So we're going to get that off. Okay, so next step for this one would be to use our painter's tape and go just below where we're going to do the blue band. So the tops of the red vertical stripes. And we're going to do a blue band. But before we do that blue band, before we paint that blue and the top blue, when I was weeding out our stencil that we just used for the stars, I was very careful and I kept the stars, which was the insides of this. So it's going to save us some money in the long run by reusing these stars so that we don't have to cut out another template just to use the stars. So I figure if I can save money and serve my purpose at the same time, I might as well, because like I said before, crafting ain't cheap. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball the spacing on this, and it's not going to be perfect, but it's kind of the theme of the channel. Perfection isn't necessary. The end result I would like to look as close to perfect as possible, but how we get there along the way isn't going to be perfect. I'll fit one more star in here. Okay, there. I'm gonna rub all those stars down, make sure they're good and sealed around the edges, and then I will paint that. Got my blue paint here. So paint over this. And you can use a sponge for this too, but I just find the brush works just as good on this part too. It's just personal preference. As with most things in crafting, there's more than one way to do it. So while I'm doing this, I want to give credit to where I got the idea. I saw this something similar, or maybe it was pretty close to this, on Pinterest. It's where I get a lot of inspiration from. And I thought, well, I clicked on it and the link took me to Etsy. And I was like, well, you know, I can make something like that. I don't need to buy it. So here I am. I am making something very similar. All right. That looks good. So we're gonna let that dry. And I'm gonna touch up the white on here. I'm gonna get a very fine, or not necessarily fine, but very flat. I don't know if you can see how flat that is, a flat edge paintbrush, and use the white and just find where the biggest mistakes were and freehand it. If you don't have a steady hand to freehand stuff like this, you may consider using the Mod Podge method, or even the painting the base color over top of the stencil method also, to keep your lines straighter. But like I said, we're not going for perfection. That one's being stubborn. There we go. And I think I will end up sanding this to make it look a little more rustic. I don't like how thick the paint marks are. I think I was trying to paint faster so that you guys wouldn't have to watch me watch paint dry. Of course, I am probably going to speed up the painting in the video when I post it, so. Okay, that's good enough for right now, especially since I'm probably going to end up sanding a little bit where it's really thick, like right here. I don't like how thick that looks, and I don't like how thin this looks, so I'm going to end up sanding or trying to even out the paint freehand style, maybe. Like I said, not going for perfection along the way, so you get to watch me make a lot of mistakes. When I'm done with this, I will let it dry, and then we'll come back and be just about ready to put the fuses on, and we'll be done. Stop playing with that. I'm gonna let it dry. The more I fuss with, the more I think I mess it up. So I'm gonna let that dry and we'll be back. Looks like we are dry here, so we can pick off our stars and the painter's tape. And then the last thing we have to do is put on the fuses, which is the final step. And then I'll show you how to display them. There's a couple different ways to do it. I think I like it the best with the little bit of jute rope tied around it. But you can also just put them on a table in a grouping of 3 and get the same effect. But I like the way that it looks with the jute rope, so that's the method I'll show you. You can also do ribbon. Sorry, couldn't think of the word. You can also do ribbon, like a patriotic ribbon or just a red ribbon. I've seen people do things like this with like a wider burlap, and that could be done also. So just comes down to whatever you look you like the best. These stars turned out really nicely. Let's get all these off, and then I will glue on the fuses. And I'm just using hot glue. You can do any method you want. Hot glue just is fast and easy, so it works for me. Perfect. Okay. All right, so that is the way they look like. Let's get the fuses. What I'm using for fuse is this is wired jute rope. And I chose the wired because it is thick and it looks really great when you put it in there like a fuse. It looks really good. It makes it look really thick and you can see it. You can use just regular jute rope. That works also. But I just prefer the jute rope with the wire in it. One thing you need to do to keep the wired edges from fraying is to spray the jute rope before you cut it into little sections. Spray it with like a spray adhesive or something along those lines so that the jute rope doesn't fray from the wiring on the inside. I sprayed mine with this Elmer's crafting bond and let it dry overnight so that the wire wouldn't fray off of the jute wouldn't fray off of the wire. And I'm just putting a little dab of hot glue, and then as you put the wire in, you want to kind of rotate it in the way that the jute goes so that it also seals it in there nice and doesn't fray as you're trying to put it in. So that's the final one. Perfect. So that is what they look like. Next step, we are going to get the rope, jute rope, and tie it up. And I absolutely love this hot glue gun my husband bought for me. It's cordless, battery operated, and I absolutely love it because it just makes my life so much easier. It's made by Bonder. It's great. Just gonna cut this and tie it around in a simple bow. Probably could have made it a little longer, but we're gonna make it work. Little tiny bow. There we go. Probably will make this a little bit longer just to give it a little bit of extra fringe on the end, but I like the way that that looks. You can cut the fuses if you don't like how long they are. So here's our final product. I think it looks really good. We made a couple mistakes along the way, but I think the end result is great. I'm gonna bend these a little bit because I like the way they look as a little curved fuses better, and they stay bent that way since it's wired. So that's our project for today. Thank you so much for following along with this and for hanging out with me in my craft room. Next time we're gonna do something also patriotic, but I will show you that in a little preview at the end. Thanks for watching.
to join us for our next video of this patriotic stack.